You don't like to talk then?
Well, not really. Sometimes if there's something to say, but there's really nothing to say these days.
He was known as the Quiet One, the spiritual soul of the Beatles. While Lennon and McCartney soaked up the spotlight, George Harrison quietly forged his own identity within a band. But behind that calm demeanor simmered a deep-seated resentment, one that few ever saw coming. So, who was the true object of George's hidden fury? Was it a bandmate who stole the limelight, a manager who pulled the strings, or someone even more unexpected? Today, we peel back the curtain on the most complicated and perhaps most surprising relationship in Beatles history, because behind the music and fame lies a grudge that could forever change the way we view the Fab Four. Buckle up as we uncover the truth about the man George Harrison despised most. While John Lennon and Paul McCartney's songwriting rivalry is well documented, whispers of another strained relationship have lingered for years. This time, the focus is on George Harrison and the one person he allegedly harbored a deep animosity towards. The dynamics of power and creative control within the band often led to friction, particularly with Harrison, who sought more creative input and recognition for his contributions. He was constantly overshadowed by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. But before we get to that, let's go back to how it all began. George Harrison was born on February 25, 1943 at 12, Arnold Grove in Wavertree, Liverpool. He was the youngest of 4 children born to Harold Hargreaves Harrison and Louise Harrison. Harold worked as a bus conductor and had previously been a ship's steward with the White Star Line, while Louise was of Irish Catholic descent and worked as a shop assistant. George had 3 siblings, an elder sister named Louise and 2 elder brothers, Harold and Peter. According to Boyd, a biographer of Harrison, his mother Louise was particularly supportive of her children's happiness, recognizing George's passion for music as a source of joy for him. Louise Harrison had a deep passion for music and was known for her enthusiastic singing voice, which could rattle the windows of their home, much to the surprise of visitors. During her pregnancy with George, she frequently listened to Radio India broadcasts, drawn to the mystical sounds of sitars and tablas, hoping this exotic music would bring peace and calm to her unborn baby. Harrison biographer Joshua Green wrote, "Every Sunday, she tuned into mystical sounds evoked by sitars and tablas, hoping that the exotic music would bring peace and calm to the baby in the womb." The Harrison family initially lived at 12 Arnold Grove, a modest terraced house in Wavertree, Liverpool, where George spent his first 4 years. The house lacked modern amenities, with an outdoor toilet and heating provided by a single coal fire. In 1949, the family moved to a council house at 25 Upton Green in Speke. At the age of 5, George enrolled at Dovedale Primary School. He later passed the 11+ exam and attended Liverpool Institute High School for Boys from 1954 to 1959. Despite the school offering a music course, George was disappointed by the absence of guitars and felt the educational environment was stifling. George Harrison's early musical influences were diverse and formative. He was inspired by artists such as George Formby, Cab Calloway, Django Reinhardt, Hoagy Carmichael, Carl Perkins, and Lonnie Donegan during his youth in the 1950s. However, there was a pivotal moment in early 1956 that deeply impacted him. While riding his bicycle, he heard Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel playing from a nearby house, sparking his fascination with rock and roll. Even during his school days at Liverpool Institute High School for Boys, Harrison's passion for music was evident. He would often doodle guitars in his school books and declare, "I was totally into guitars." Another significant influence on him was Slim Whitman, whom he saw in a magazine or on television, solidifying his interest in the instrument. Around the age of 14, Harrison's musical journey took a practical turn when his friend Raymond Hughes offered to sell him a guitar. His mother Louise purchased it for £3.10, which adjusted for inflation would be about £110 in 2024. A family friend taught Harrison some foundational songs like Whispering, Sweet Sue, and Dinah, setting him on his path as a guitarist. Inspired by Lonnie Donegan's skiffle music, Harrison formed his skiffle group called the Rebels with his brother Peter and friend Arthur Kelly. It was during this time, on the bus to school, that he encountered Paul McCartney. That was the beginning of a lifelong friendship and musical partnership that would shape the course of music history. In March 1958, George Harrison auditioned for John Lennon and Paul McCartney's skiffle group, the Quarrymen, at Rory Storm's Morgue Skiffle Club. Initially, Lennon felt Harrison, who had just turned 15, was too young to join. However, McCartney arranged a second audition on a Liverpool bus, where Harrison impressed Lennon by playing the lead guitar part for Raunchy. This led to Harrison socializing with the group and eventually becoming a full member. Despite his father's wish for him to continue his education, Harrison left school at 16 and took on an apprenticeship as an electrician at Blackler's, a local department store. During the Quarrymen's first tour of Scotland in 1960, Harrison used the pseudonym Carl Harrison, inspired by the musician Carl Perkins. This period marked the beginning of Harrison's journey with the Beatles, where his guitar skills and musical contributions would become integral to the band's evolution and success. In 1960, the Beatles, under the management of Alan Williams, secured gigs at the Indra and Kaiser Keller clubs in Hamburg, owned by Bruno Koschmider. This marked their initial residency in Hamburg, where they began honing their musical skills in the vibrant club scene. However, their stint was cut short when George Harrison, still underage, was deported for being unable to legally work in nightclubs. By December 1961, Brian Epstein had taken over as their manager, refining their public image and ultimately securing them a recording contract with EMI. Their first single, Love Me Do, was released and reached number 17 on the record retailer chart. The following year, their debut album, Please Please Me, launched them into the stratosphere of fame as Beatlemania swept across the globe. George Harrison, known for his serious and focused demeanor on stage, earned the nickname the Quiet Beatle. This title became prominent during the Beatles' arrival in the United States in early 1964, when Harrison was notably unwell with strep throat and a fever. Medical advice prompted him to conserve his voice until their scheduled performance on The Ed Sullivan Show, where the Beatles made a historic television debut that further fueled their worldwide popularity. Harrison's persona as the Quiet Beatle, coined by the press, amused him and persisted throughout his career. Musically, Harrison's influence within the Beatles began to assert itself. He had 2 lead vocal credits on the Beatles' debut album, including the popular song, Do You Want to Know a Secret?, written by Lennon McCartney. By their second album, With the Beatles, 1963, Harrison had 3 lead vocal credits, including Don't Bother Me, which marked his first solo writing credit. Harrison played a significant role as the Beatles' scout for new American releases, particularly in soul music. His musical taste expanded further by the time of Rubber Soul, 1965, where he led the band toward folk rock influences inspired by the Byrds and Bob Dylan. His experimentation with Indian classical music also began to emerge, notably with his use of the sitar on Norwegian Wood, This Bird Has Flown. Harrison later expressed Rubber Soul as his favorite Beatles album. The album Revolver, 1966, showcased Harrison's growing prowess as a songwriter and innovator within a band. His compositions included Taxman, which opened the album, Love You Too, featuring Indian musical elements like the sitar and tabla, and I Want to Tell You. Harrison's tambura part in Lennon's Tomorrow Never Knows highlighted the Beatles' exploration of non-Western instruments and sounds, further expanding their musical horizons. George Harrison's musical journey with the Beatles took a significant turn with his exploration of Indian music and spirituality. His use of the sitar on Norwegian Wood marked a respectful representation of Asian culture in popular music. By the time of Revolver in 1966, Harrison's influence extended with songs like Love You Too, earning him the nickname the Maharaja of Raga Rock. His interest in non-Western instruments continued in Strawberry Fields Forever, where he played the swarmandal. By 1967's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Harrison's spiritual pursuits were evident with his composition, Within You Without You, featuring sitar and tambura, and he chose to depict Eastern gurus on the album cover. In January 1968, George Harrison recorded The The Inner Light at EMI's Bombay studio with local Indian musicians, marking his first Beatles single with a composition inspired by Hinduism and meditation. During the tumultuous recording of the Beatles' White Album later that year, tensions peaked within the group, leading to Ringo's Starr briefly leaving. Harrison's contributions included While My Guitar Gently Weeps, featuring Eric Clapton, and the upbeat Savoy Truffle. By late 1968, Harrison found inspiration from Bob Dylan and the band's communal music approach during a visit to Woodstock, influencing his desire for creative freedom, which clashed with Lennon and McCartney's dominance within the Beatles. Tensions escalated during the Let It Be filming at Twickenham Studios in early 1969, prompting Harrison to quit the band on January 10th, disillusioned with the studio environment and interpersonal dynamics. After briefly leaving, Harrison returned 12 days later when the Beatles agreed to relocate their film project to Apple Studio and abandon Paul McCartney's idea of returning to public performances. Despite improved relations, tensions persisted during the recording of their 1969 album, Abbey Road. Harrison's contributions to Abbey Road included two classic tracks, Here Comes the Sun and Something. These songs marked a significant milestone for Harrison, as he finally achieved equal songwriting status alongside Lennon and McCartney.